Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled, Neighbor put a porta-potty next to the property line just meters away from my pool. This stinky story about how I got revenge on my neighbor is probably my favorite one to tell my friends and family. I will start off by saying that my neighbor and I have not gotten along the entire time that we have lived next door to each other. The guy was a jerk from the very first day that I met him. He lived here first and had his property nicely done up with a well-landscaped yard and nice cars. I will admit, his property was attractive. No matter how pretty your yard is or how rich you are, there is no reason to just be a douchebag. My wife and I walked over one day while he was outside messing around in the flower beds and cordially introduced ourselves. We had only been there a few days, and this was one of the first opportunities we have had to say hello. Almost the instant that we walked onto his property, he was shouting at us to get off his grass, like some typical old man on his porch yelling about how the whippersnappers need to get off his lawn. My wife and I jumped back and started saying that we were his new neighbors just trying to say hello. His response was a lot of incoherent grumbling and a half-assed wave. I took this as I should probably just assume we won't be friends and went back to my house. Not too many weeks after that, I realized that he had some work going on at his place. It looked like they were setting up to build some kind of addition to the back of his house. Maybe a sunroom? Either way, there were several construction workers there every day for weeks, and one day a porta-potty showed up in my yard, or at least right on the edge. We also have a pool in the backyard, which the porta-potty was only meters away from. Super sanitary, right? The construction workers would go in and out of the mobile toilet several times a day, which was pretty awkward when my teenage daughters were outside swimming. Not only are these grown men taking a crap meters away from my pool, but they spent an inappropriate amount of time gawking at my daughters in their bathing suits. As you can imagine, the situation went from annoying to an actual problem really fast. It was a week later and I noticed the neighbor outside, so I used this opportunity to try and talk to him again. I managed to get his attention and flagged him over, not daring to walk onto his grass. He ended up meeting me at the property divide and talking to me from over his fence. I again introduced myself, barely getting him to tell me his name, which was Mike, apparently. I complimented his yard and asked him what he is adding to his house. He seemed annoyed at my questions, but chose to answer them anyway, stating that he was indeed building a Four Seasons room onto his house. I then decided to ask what I really wanted. What's up with the porta-potty? He glared at me and said that it is on his property and that he can put it anywhere he wants. It's only going to be there temporarily after all, he said. I then point out that it is right on my property line and that the workers keep staring at my daughters, using it as an excuse to come over to my yard and ogle them. He said that he had not noticed anything like that and then told me to keep my daughters inside if I don't like people looking at them. This statement pissed me off pretty badly. And yeah, ripe stars, that has to be one of the dumbest statements of the 21st century. Anyway, they should be able to swim in their own pool without being gawked at by a bunch of men twice their age. If Mike was not an old man, and if I was not a better person than I was in college, I would have decked him right in his mouth. Please move the porta-potty, Mike, I told him angrily before I turned and walked away. I went back inside and had a drink to try and calm my nerves. The next day, you best believe it, that frickin' porta-potty was moved closer to my pool. I did not think that this was even possible, considering where I believed the property lines to be. This was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I called a property surveyor to come and define where the true dividing line was between our yards. I was also going to have a privacy fence built that should fix the issue of people watching my family swimming. I don't know why there wasn't one already, to be honest, probably stupid Mike ruining the old homeowner's plans of building a fence. The surveyor came out and immediately made a comment about the Porta-Potty. He laughed and said that he understood why he was there. It did not take the professional more than 20 minutes to tell me that I was getting screwed by this old man next door. Not only is the property line not where I originally thought, but Mike's fence is actually on my side of the property. By about 17 inches to be exact, meaning that the stupid Porta-Potty that he thought was rightfully on his side was actually encroaching onto my property, giving me every right to have it removed. I shook the surveyor's hand and gave him a good-sized tip and started plotting my next plan. I decided that I was not just going to move the Porta-Potty, but I'm going to do more than that. I knew how much his yard meant to him. Having it look pretty and perfect is his entire purpose in life at this point, so why not ruin that for him? Without actually doing any damage, of course, not trying to get sued. I called the company that they were renting the Porta-Potty from and had them move it to his yard, right where the property line for him actually started, not where his fence currently was. You know, since that is wrong anyways. Meanwhile, my wife was doing her research and planning the next part of our little revenge story. She was starting the process of building a compost pile, which would stay right on our property line that faced his precious front yard. If you have ever seen a compost pile, they can be a little stinky. It is where you take all the leftover kitchen vegetable scraps, leaves and other compostable items and leave them to break down, eventually turning into a rich fertilizer. They are practical and eco-friendly, but not exactly pretty, nor do they smell like roses. The next day, when Mike realized what was happening, he marched over to my yard where I was measuring boards and wire to set up for the compost pile. I thought about hitting him with the "get off my grass" line that he gave us. He was fuming, his wrinkly face was red and scrunched, his eyes were staring me down with such malice. All this over a Porta-Potty, cannot help but laugh at him. Anyway, he started by saying that he is going to sue me for trespassing, moving the Porta-Potty to his yard, and that he has already called his lawyers. I told him I did not give a damn and that he could call his lawyers all he wanted, but I know where the property line really is. I was prepared and had the surveyor paperwork in my back pocket, which I took out and showed him. As he stared at the paper, his face grew redder and angrier. He started sputtering, having a hard time to find the right words for me, slapping him in the face with actual documentation. Mike threw the paperwork on the ground and stormed off without another word. I continued to work on the compost pile. I'm not even sure if he realized what I was doing or if he even cared after I proved him wrong. A few weeks passed without any word from Mike and the compost pile came along beautifully. Already looking like a giant eyesore, I loved it. I did not even care about the sacrifice I was making to my yard's aesthetic. I just wanted to piss him off at this point. He has attempted to cover up the view of the compost pile by throwing some bushes around it, but really, it just makes his yard look tacky. Mike left the Porta-Potty where I put it until the construction was finished at his house and the ugly poop closet finally disappeared. I still pursued having the privacy fence built, which was amusing because they had to tear down the 17 inches of his fence that encroached onto my yard. When I had to tell him what was happening, he answered by slamming his door in my face and had no other rebuttal. Our disliking for each other has continued the entire time we have lived next to each other, which is going on about 7 years now. And that is fine, as long as he stays on his side of the property line. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you enjoy the stories about absolutely insane neighbors, then please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance, your support is very much appreciated. The next one is titled "Steal My Car, Bad Idea." This story happened approximately 4 years ago to a friend of mine. He and his wife, girlfriend back then, took a house loan, bought a new Chevrolet Camaro, and in general they were preparing for a life together. He has proposed to her. Because of their lack of free time due to their hard working to pay off the loan, they did not have time for themselves, nor for the abnormal amount of other things such as the housework. So they hired a maid. His first impressions about her were good and they decided that she is the person they will trust. And so they handed her their their house keys because they were at work most of the time she came around to clean their house. The first few weeks she worked hard and always paid attention to detail and nicely cleaned their house from the bottom to the very top. She was also instructed not to let anyone in and to always lock the door when she left. After 6 months of her working there, strange things began to happen. Not in any anomalous way, but things started to disappear, being stolen. It all started with small things like AA batteries, which are barely noticeable missing, but soon things graduated as phone chargers, perfumes, the more expensive ones, and some electrical gadgets went missing. My friend thought he simply lost them, but soon the maid raised suspicion as the things went missing when my friend was not present when she was detailing their house. But without any evidence, blaming her was not in place. Also, he found out on some social media that she has gotten some serious debts, at least in thousands of dollars, aliments, divorce, court settlements, etc. So he decided to install security cameras, and he did not tell the maid. 5 weeks forward and he had enough evidence to press charges on her, as the things she stole were valued at around $250 plus. In my country, anything stolen above $250 is considered a crime. He got furious when his flash disk containing private documents as well as some of his billing and his official work documents were stolen. But he wanted her to get even more into the stealing so he can squish even the last cent out of her. So he came up with a plan. He told the maid that he and his girlfriend will be gone for a week for a honeymoon and that he will be going by a taxi, not to pay extra money airports charge for the parking. That means his brand new Chevrolet Camaro will stay parked in the house the maid has gotten keys off. They rented an apartment through Airbnb just a few blocks away from his place, and he placed a GPS tracking keychain into his car so he could see where his car is through the phone app. He then placed the car keys in a visible spot on the house so the maid will notice. All what was left is wait for the magic to happen. And his intuition was right. After 2 days of almost constant watching the GPS tracker's location, the car left the garage. All of a sudden, the car was cruising at 90 miles per hour on the highway. My friend immediately called the cops. They catch the maid something like 20 miles, 30 kilometers away. And now the revenge can take place. He decided to press charges on the maid. At the court, the maid told the judges my friend told her to drive the car to some untold location. She acted like she forgot where it is. And the one that should go to the jail is him, because he wrongly accused her and he just wants to get money from her to pay his loan. However, the tables turned. My friend and his lawyer showed the court all of the video evidence of her stealing his stuff valued highly above $250. It was like $40,000 including the car, so it was a crime. She started swearing and telling every single lie she could think of. The security had to calm her down. She is facing 5 years in a jail and she was charged $5,000 including all the stolen property but the car, his lawyer and some other court stuff. The price was excluding the car because it was returned almost immediately. Few days later, police did a house check on her and most of the stolen stuff was there. There were also some other things reported missing from other customers of her. Due to her previous debts and her new ones she owes, she will very likely become a homeless when gotten out of jail. The next one is titled, Don't Yell at People. I used to work in a small family-owned doctor's office. A couple of years in, they got a legal fight and experienced staff started leaving. Being young and dumb, I wanted to be loyal and ended up managing half of the doctor's office. The other half was managed by Brittany, aka Brittany Karen. She had a team of 3 that did the work of 6. The company got bought and a new owner came in. He was like Danny DeVito in gold chains and a bad toupee. He was dumb and no one respected him. He screamed constantly about little things at anyone. He micromanaged and did not bother to understand someone's job before telling them how to do it better. He tried to streamline processes without knowing how they worked, but mostly he yelled. One day, the hardest working person in the entire clinic, a nurse who started every appointment, was a few minutes late. She was a single mother and her kid was sick, so she showed up less than 10 minutes later than usual. Danny proceeded to berate the nurse in front of the entire office, scream about dumb things like being a few minutes late, and then strange things like how she wrote dates, then absurd things like how her bedside manner sucked, she had gotten flowers the day before from a patient because she was so good. When the nurse put in her notice at the end of the day, Danny fired her on the spot, told her to leave and never come back. I had been job searching and had actually gotten an offer. I was planning on giving a lot of notice but could not give notice if I would be fired immediately. I had student loans and was paycheck to paycheck. I grabbed the 2 remaining members of the admin staff and explained that I was going to quit without notice before too long. Brittany understood and said she too was in the final stages of taking a new job. We agreed that we would quietly all find new jobs and then duck out when it was convenient. We had to quietly let all the other staff know, and each of us quietly started smuggling our personal effects out of the office. I had a start date 2 weeks out, but honestly could not give notice without risking my financial health. A week or so later, Danny started screaming about the color of tape I had used to duct tape down a power cable months before. I had used orange and yellow to make it more visible, but Danny said that was unprofessional. I asked him how he would like me to fix it. Danny, well, that is not my problem, that's yours. I paused for a second and said, I don't think it is my problem, I'm out. I grabbed my small box of desk things as Danny howled at me. Danny, you will never find another job in this town. I own every doctor's office in this county. I don't need you, since I've got Brittany. Brittany looked at him and said, Brittany, I'd been meaning to tell you that today is my last day too. We packed our things and walked out, as Danny called the cops saying his employees were stealing things like their own birthday cards and pictures of their kids. We texted the 3rd employee who was on lunch and explained what happened. It sounds like she did not go back, and without front desk, billing or nursing staff, a doctor's office simply cannot run. I am told they were closed for almost 2 weeks before they got temporary employees, but had no one to train them. Danny shuttered and resold the business a few months later to the big dog in the industry, which is a charity. Since their books are open, we saw that they bought the company, really just a clients list, for about 15% less than what Danny had paid a few months prior. Added a bit more information, the police did show up and one of the officers who responded was a patient we had treated for months. Weeks later, Danny tried to withhold our final paychecks, claiming that we forfeited wages if we did not give notice, which was illegal, and that we had stolen valuable intellectual property. He meant the passwords. He did not know anyone's user IDs/passwords, so he had to pay an external IT team to get all of our files. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.